assess them and what can be done. Before I start my presentation, can I request all of you to write down on a piece of paper when you were students or as a teacher, what is the environment, what sort of learning environment you really liked in your teaching or in your learning?
Okay.
Just write it down, and as we go, we will talk about it later on, and I'll start my presentation as we go.
Oke, jadi Rekha minta Bu Mukti. Assalamualaikum, Rekha. There is Bu Mukti with us as well. So silakan ditulis di kertas lembar lingkungan pembelajaran apa yang menyenangkan buat kalian ketika mengajar atau ketika menjadi guru gitu. Lingkungan pembelajaran seperti apa gitu yang menyenangkan gitu. Silahkan ditulis di kertas, nanti Rekha bisa melihat gitu. Oke. I have told them as well, Rekha. So,
yeah, thank you. So what I'm going to talk is, today, going to talk about the introduction to learning environment. And don't know where we reach, and if required, we can talk about it in future sessions as well. So my presentation, I've distributed around the historical background of learning environment, because keeping in view learning environment is a recent field of study in educational research. It is worth knowing how it developed. So how the tools were developed and what tools were developed, in which circumstances we can apply them. Then to a little extent, the importance of qualitative data in learning environments, because it's a recent addition, nearly 25 years back, we started working on including qualitative data and making sense of the learning environments. And what as educators, what are we trying to do or achieve through good, positive learning environments? Is a good school is a school where good learning is happening. So what are the characteristics of a good school that through those characteristics, we will be able to develop good learning environments? Yuli, you want to talk about it, or should I move ahead?
You just move away.
Okay, I'll move away, and then I won't stop now.
Yes.
Till I finish.
Yeah. Please just make it screen bigger. I mean the slideshow.
Not going. I'm trying. It's happened.
Yes. You should.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, if we look at the history of learning environments, the earliest evidence is in the theory of Levin, who was a psychologist, was not an educationist. And according to him, he said that the way we behave depends on two factors. Humans behave based on their personality and their environment. And this is not any different than where we say nature and nurture. And personality as such, your personality, my personality, I don't have much control over it. But we can change the environment. We can make it conducive. And research has shown that if the environment is positive, is made conducive, in return, it changes the personality and it makes personality friendly. And so both these factors play hand-in-hand role with developing an environment. After 93, Murray in 38 said, we can assess an environment as a detached observer. That means detached observer I don't have to do anything with the classroom. I'm not a classroom teacher. I'm not a researcher. I don't have any vested interest in the environment, and I'm making my own judgments about what is in that environment. And then environment observed by people who are in that environment. Like if I'm going as a researcher and keep myself detached, but at the same time, observations of the students in that classroom. And we draw correlations between them. And it was called Alpha Press. As it was going ahead, few years later, Sternstein and Bloom came, and we could look at the perceptions of environment unique to that individual, which gave rise to different types of learning environment instruments. Like if we are looking at the chemistry learning environment, are we in present time? I'm really very keen to look at the type of learning environments we are developing in this Zoom setting. Universities we are developing, and it can have both teachers as well as students. How are teachers adopting and adapting to it? And what are the impact on students? In Curtin University, we are not allowed to use Zoom, but we do use WebEx or Microsoft Teams. It doesn't make any difference what platform you use, but we are developing new learning environments. And that is where the environment which is unique to an individual and then is shared among the group. The group could be 50 students attending a class or 500 students who have had experience working with in one platform. So moving from Sternstein and Bloom, which they gave rise to Better Press, we thought of, when we are studying these environments, which are generally human environments. We are not studying the ecology. We are not studying the environment or the culture. We are looking at the human environments. So what are the ecological dimensions? What's like ecology of Perth and Jakarta is different. And is that ecology impacting the type of environment we are providing to the students? If a classroom is very hot and humid, how do I expect that students will give me 100% attention? They need to be comfortable. What type of furniture we do? Is it making an impact? In Curtin University, a few years back, they transformed the grounds, added sitting places in the grounds where students could come and sit and study. Guess what? Even if the parking of their cars, parking fees was made high, but the ecological environment in the university was such that students started spending more and more time in the university. Then is the organizational structure. Is there a structure in the organization? If the organizational structure for students is not supportive, it is going to impact the environment they are working in. A student wants, for a genuine reason, wants an extension for submitting their assignment. And as a teacher, I refuse that. That student's motivation to carry on the study will be hampered. Then are the personal characteristics, which can be personal characteristics of the teacher, personal characteristics of the student itself, or the whole group then. Every culture has different characteristics. coming here I came to Australia from overseas. I adopted this place as a country, as home. But the place where I come from, education amongst parents is highly valued. So going to school, I didn't have a choice. It was taken for granted that I will be studying, I will be doing university. And then I come here and I see a 14-year-old child telling me, my father told me, you won't understand mathematics. So those things built into the personal characteristics of the student. And then there are psychosocial characteristics, that is psychology of the student and the social environment we are creating for students. And psychosocial characteristics have the maximum impact on students, as well as psychosocial characteristics can be controlled by the researchers or the teachers or the teaching community, which means principal or your district office. You may not have much control. Like, you can't change the weather of Jakarta. You may not be able to change the organizational structure as a teacher. You will have very little control on the personal characteristics of students. But as teachers, you can change the psychosocial characteristics of an environment, which in turn will surely impact their learning. And in this space, Moos gave us 3 dimensions. He said, look at the personal development. When we improve the psychosocial characteristics, it helps in personal development of the person or the student. Relationships are improved and system maintenance leading to system change. And if we have all these 3 in positive direction, more learning will happen. If we have them in negative direction, I don't need to talk about that. It's going to impact negatively on students and overall learning. So how do we assess psychosocial characteristics of the classroom? Although it's established, yes, we improve the psychosocial characteristics, we will have better learning, and that's what research has demonstrated for more than 4 decades now. We are close to 50th year now, is we observe and systematically classify what's happening in the classroom. We develop the qualitative descriptors of class or an individual, or participants' perceptions of the classroom. So most of this research, we look at, when we talk about the quantitative data, we look at the participants' perceptions of the classrooms. But at the same time, we do look at the observations and qualitative descriptors lead to looking at the participants' perceptions. So what did we do? As I told, educational environments, classroom environments, school environments, we can consider them as social, psychological context or determinants of learning. If we have psychosocial behaviors under control, it will determine whether the learning is happening in the classroom or not. Research on environment usually assumes that students, curriculum, teacher, and other internal and external factors affect environment. And I don't think any one of you would not agree with this statement. In case you would have any comments, please keep them written. After the lecture, we'll talk about that. And if we have good environment and more like measures of motivation than measures of ability or achievement, we look at what is motivating students. And when we look at the motivation, it automatically, in learning environment research, we don't look at the achievement, but there is a strong correlation between motivation and achievement. We try to improve motivation, which in return impacts the achievement. But at the same time, learning environment has no impact on ability of students. We do have control over the motivation by improving the learning environments. So why do we improve the learning environments? Our own Professor Barry Fraser, he did some calculations, and according to him, by the time students finish their school, high school, they have already spent 20,000 hours in a classroom situation. It's a major part of a child's lifetime. So whatever sort of experience we give them in these 20,000 hours is going to make or mar their life. So if they're spending this time in their classrooms, it is responsibility of us educators to make their experience enjoyable. And we, as educators, we always focus on assessing students' achievement. And we haven't paid till, although things are changing, but still, you know, the discussion is around achievement, but we don't pay enough attention to the type of learning environment we develop, because it is certain, established, once we improve the learning environments, achievement will automatically change. So it's not a waste of time paying attention to classroom climate. And now that you people have started research in this direction, you will see the change in coming years in the whole educational community. Once the classroom environment is improved, it will surely impact the student outcomes. And that's what happens through paying attention to learning environments. Now, what do? We have established that learning environment should be enjoyable, positive. So how do we make sense of learning environments? It's not me, it's even my gurus, my lecturers. They started thinking about it, and they decided that we develop some instruments. And what sort of information it will provide us. Is a class dominated by a teacher, or it's student-centered? And it was considered that student-centered classroom would be more enjoyable and favor student learning. And student actively participate, or they only listen to the teacher. As science educators, all of us will agree, unless students are given that experiential learning, it's not a deep learning coming from pedagogy point of view. And are students cooperative, or they discuss? And if you look at now, 21st century learning skills, where we are, communication is a big part of UNESCO 21st century learning skills. Are students discussing what they are doing in the classroom? These are the things learning fathers of or grandfathers of learning environment started thinking about. And then, is the teacher supportive or is the teacher approachable? I do remember when I was in school, there were many teachers whom you couldn't even approach because they were not approachable. We were scared of those teachers, and that's not a very positive learning environment. So what happened nearly, it's not 30, I would say it happened nearly 40 years ago. The initial learning environment tools, the first 3 learning environment tools which were developed was learning environment inventory, which I think is not being used anywhere in research now. But this was one of the first learning environment and inventory made in, developed in Chicago by Professor Wahlberg. And he is still active in this research. Followed by Michael, and a few years later, there were a few shortcomings found in learning environment in inventory, where and they were overcome in my class inventory, because my class inventory had specific scales, and we are still working in those scale system. And then move to classroom environment scale, where we or the researchers try to look at teacher support and innovation in teaching. If you can see the difference between the first and the third scale questionnaires, the learning environment inventory focused more on cohesiveness and goal direction. Is teacher leading you in a goal? Is teacher focused? So it was more on what is happening in that classroom, and again towards achievement. But in few years' time, when they moved towards classroom environment scale, it was more focused on teacher support. So is teacher supportive of students? Is teacher innovative in teaching? So focus had shifted from teacher-centered to student-centered. And that's how this field developed over a period of time. As we progressed, there were specific purpose-built instruments made, like ICEQ, Individual Classroom Environment Questionnaire, where it was the main scales were looking at, do students have independence in the classroom? And is there any difference between this class and some other class? As focus started, or the studies started with school children, some of the researchers came and they wanted to look at what was happening in college and university classroom environment inventory was developed, which is CUCEI, and someone looked at it as our class, and it works. And I don't see this questionnaire has been used in last 30 years, but we do still use CUCEI, and focus in this questionnaire was on feedback. Are students getting enough feedback? Because you would agree with me that unless you give feedback to students on their work they're doing, there isn't going to be growth in students. And that's something which most, and sometimes I even feel, guilty of doing that. A student gives me assignments because of my time constraint. I mark it not very well and give it back to that student. It's not helpful. It's not helpful. The best thing would be I give the feedback, give student time to improve on it, and that's where you can see the student growth. And is that being practiced in the classroom? And opportunity to grow. That's what will give that give it to students. As it was happening, learning environment research was adopted very actively by science educators. And that's where our SMEC in Curtin University Science and Mathematics Education Center came into being. And SMEC was known as Mecca of learning environment, or some people would even call us dawns of learning environment at time. And we developed science laboratory environment inventory, and I think Yuli has done some research around that. As SLIVE was developed, then other thought was, how are teachers interacting in the classroom? What is their interpersonal behavior? And QTI developed. QTI was not developed here in Australia. It was, although it was later on improved on or further validated in here in Perth, but it was established in Netherlands by Theo Boebels. And Theo Boebels has a full-fledged research center, who are looking at different aspects of teacher behavior. QTI, when initially developed, had over 100 items in it. Then was an American version developed of 72 items. Later on, when Theo Boebels came to Australia, it was further reduced to 48 items. And recently, I should say even 2 years back, one of his students has further reduced it to 24 items. So, because what we are seeing with time, student attention span is reducing. It's difficult for, the way Yuli was saying, we'll do online research. It's difficult to retain students' attention beyond 20 minutes. So shorter the questionnaire, but it has to be valid as well. It has to show good psychometric structure when we do the statistical analysis, but it has been reduced to 24, so, and it's available for use if you want to. And these are specifically purpose-built instruments, and you can see that each of the instrument measured something very specific, and this research happened nearly 30 years back. Moving on, then again came computer-assisted learning environments and constructivist learning environment survey. And computer-assisted learning environment looked more at gender equity, because around that time it was presumed that males were more abrupt with computer-assisted learning environments, while as females found it difficult to work in computer-assisted environments. And then came constructivist learning environment, where more focus was given on the student's prior knowledge and the type of collaborations were happening in the classroom. And prior knowledge is not an issue, but collaboration is also strongly coming up in 21st century skills. It's one of the major skills identified by 21st century skills. And my most recent research in learning environments is showing that this is a skill with which students are struggling. They don't want to collaborate. And even in university, since we have gone online, I recently sent a feedback form to students in humanities, looking at how they were coping up with the online teaching. Collaboration is something which they are finding very difficult to do. But my question is, if students can't collaborate when they are studying, can they collaborate when they go to the place of work? As all of you are working, and you know you can't work in isolation. When you are working, you have to collaborate. So should we be training them right from the beginning? And this is a skill with which students are struggling. Something needs to be changed in this area. And it's not only happening here in Australia. This is my research all over the world showing that collaboration is a skill which we need to instill in students. Probably someone from your group, Yuli, can take it up. As we develop these purpose-built questionnaires, then came the question between what is the actual learning environment and how would students prefer it to have? And is there a difference between the two? And generally, students preferred was always they wanted something more in their environment than what was existing. Then we also developed short forms, like with the earlier questionnaires I talked about, MCI and LEI. Short forms were developed so the teacher can give it and get the answers instantly. At the same time, personal and class forms were developed, like personal, I feel comfortable in this class, or students in this class are comfortable. My teacher supports me, or teacher supports students in this classroom. So these are two different aspects. Sometimes some students think that teacher is supportive, but is not supporting me. So these are behavioral changes. Or we could even look at classroom versus school environment. Some students do think that I'm coming to a great school, but my class is not good because of this teacher. Or otherwise is, I love my classroom, but I don't like this school. So school versus classroom environment was also checked. And school level environment questionnaire was developed, where we looked at the professional interest of the students, work pressure for the teachers, and participatory decision-making by the teachers. Like, was principal taking decisions from teachers into account while taking a decision, where they consulted. And this is very important for developing a great school environment. And that in return impacts the classroom environment. So how do we develop these instruments? In present scenario, if I have to develop a new questionnaire, what do? I'll look at the relevant literature, look at the characteristics or the important aspects of the classroom environment I want to assess, such as relationships between teacher and students, and or organizational structure. I will definitely take into consideration the three categories, major categories given by Moos, which is relationship, personal development, and system maintenance and system change. Are these three being covered in my questionnaire? And scales and individual items should cover aspects of classroom environment perceived to be salient by the teachers or by the researchers. And we do quite a bit around that. What I did recently, we developed and validated a questionnaire, is we developed a rough questionnaire based on literature, and had pre-tested with some students, and when these students filled it up, after that we had focus groups with students, and do you think this is measuring what we are trying to measure, and what other questions would you like to be asked in this field? And what we saw that it was a 7 scale questionnaire, and we had 35 questions. And while we were interviewing and having focus group with students, this questionnaire was increased to about 68 items. But we didn't mind that. We ran it as a 68 item questionnaire, and then further validating and doing the analysis, it was cut down. So what we did is we gave voice to each of the concerns raised by students. And that's important while you're developing this questionnaire. Otherwise, it can happen that we can miss some of the very important salient features which we have not thought about. And be careful, keep only those questions we are specifically relevant to the classroom are included in this questionnaire. That's what we did. We included, and then we, as well as based on our statistical information, ruthlessly deleted what was not relevant there. And it is economical that with small number of reliable scales to run it in the classrooms. Because if you have very long questionnaires, students are not going to, towards the last scales, they won't give you reliable answers. So keep it small, keep it concise, but make sure that you have good response to those questions. What happened? Wahlberg, as I told you, from Chicago, he said student learning is influenced by aptitude, instruction, and the environment. And that is learning is affective, behavioral, and cognitive. And if you look at in our educational systems, so we do give, we impact, most focus is given on the cognition. How many marks? How many marks? What is your rank? But can I change the aptitude of students, like their ability, their development, their motivation? Instruction. How is teacher teaching? What's the amount of instruction being given to a student? How many hours per week? Will there be a difference in students learning in these behaviors depending on the amount of instruction you're giving? A student getting 1 hour a week or 3 hours a week, and not only the amount, but then the second factor is quality. So we have to maintain both of them and a nice balance between them. But when it comes to environment, what is the environment? Home environment, classroom environment, peers is the friends with whom students spend a lot of time, and even out of school, leisure activities when students are playing. What sort of impact is it having on students? So these are the 3 things: aptitude, instruction, and environment, impacting directly on learning. I'm not in a way, as a researcher, I can't change the instruction. I can't change the aptitude, but I can change the environment, and that too, just classroom environment. I improve this will change. But yes, instruction is not beyond my scope. As I talked about my classroom inventory, which was the first environment, learning environment questionnaire made. It had the scales of satisfaction, friction, like satisfaction, are students satisfied? Is there friction in the classroom between students and the teacher? Competitiveness, students tend to become very, very competitive. And it's all up to teacher to maintain this competitiveness to a level that it helps students. If this competitiveness goes beyond that level, it's bound to develop negative behaviors in students, and that's not what we want. Difficulty. Are we teaching students at the level they should be taught? Sometimes it happens that if there is no difficulty level in teaching and learning, students lose their motivation. Or if it is more difficult than what students can understand, they will still lose motivation. So it has to be pitched at the right level. And cohesiveness, are students getting along well with each other? That's also very important. We have an actual as well as preferred form for this NCI. There are directions for the students, example, how you do it, and then the questions. Next was classroom environment scale. It has the questions of involvement, affiliation, teacher support, task orientation, and competition. I'm trying to not read everything here. You can see this was a longer questionnaire. Order and organization, rule clarity, teacher control, and innovation. But it's more on, this questionnaire was more focused on students and has an actual as well as preferred form. And all these questionnaires are validated and free for use for any researcher around the world. College and university classroom environment inventory was the first inventory made to be used in higher education. And it had scales of personalization, like teacher goes out of way to help me. Involvement, how involved these students felt in their teaching and learning. Student cohesiveness and satisfaction. There were certain questions in this questionnaire. For the first time, this was the first questionnaire where you had negatively worded question as well. And when we have a negatively worded question, its score is converted back. Like this class is boring. Teacher orientation, innovation, and individualization. Students are, and in individual sample question for individualization is students are allowed to choose activities and how they will work. It's a positively worded question. Science laboratory environment inventory had 5 scales: student cohesiveness, open-endedness, integration, rule clarity, and material environment. Each scale has 7 questions. Am I right, Julie? And it measures what it measures. And what were we trying to achieve when SLI was developed is improving learning environment. It was very helpful for school-based professional development of the teachers and teachers, especially science teachers working in the laboratories. And we were trying to look at the associations between student outcome and nature of the laboratory environment, and what were curriculum innovations on the laboratory environment, and was there any impact on student learning? And the same questionnaire was, we have a teacher form as well as a student form, and there was comparison between teacher perception of the laboratory and student perceptions of the laboratory. Teachers always thought that we have excellent lab work and excellent lab procedures, while as students generally didn't rate it as high as teachers did. You can see the questions. I would get on well with students in laboratory class. This is a teacher version. There would be opportunity for me to pursue my own science interest in laboratory class. Like, it was to see, is teacher living the way they would have wanted to, so on and so forth. The last one I'm going to talk about is about the constructivist model of learning environment. It tried to look at, it was developed around the time when constructivism came into being, which is early to mid 90s, when we thought that all children, all students enter in a classroom with their perception of some knowledge. And while students are taught by the same teacher in a classroom, every student makes their own knowledge based on their cultural knowledge they bring into the classroom. So we were looking at, are they developing deeper understanding of the topic that it's being taught? And is teacher challenging what they learn, and particularly how they learn? Because unless teacher challenges the misconceptions which are bound to happen in classroom, and constructivist model of learning was challenging that, is it happening? And do students think that what they are learning in the classroom has relevance to their life? And are they capable of negotiating their own learning? And are they reflecting what they are learning and how they are learning? That's, again, a new dimension to learning environments. Even it has happened nearly 30 years back, 25 years back. And the scales in this questionnaire were personal relevance, shared control, critical wise, student negotiation, and uncertainty. You can read the sample questions in each of the scales. I'll leave this presentation with Yuli, and Yuli, feel free to share it with the participants here. As it was developing, this was again in 99, 2000. What is happening in this classroom? It was based on the constructive extension. I shouldn't say based, it was extension of constructivist learning environment. And the scales in this questionnaire were student cohesiveness, teacher support, is teacher supportive, involvement, investigation, task orientation, cooperation, and equity. That's it. Are students treated equally by the teacher? It's very important. If students think that I'm not being treated equally in the classroom, that student will lose motivation to learn, will lose interest in that classroom. And with Vic, we developed a personal as well as a class form for this questionnaire. Class form and like class assignments are cleared so everyone knows what to do, or I know what has to be done in this classroom, these sorts of questions. Then we did, as around the time WIC was developed, there was lots of criticism of learning environment studies, that it's we are taking out the human factor out of the classrooms and we are assigning only numbers. So to make sense of what numbers were saying, a qualitative data was brought in, like if about a student was asked, why do you say that? And students saying, there are parts of science I really like, but other parts are boring. Some people in the class are like me in that they like some lessons, but some people just don't care at all. They just muck around. Now, the question, if I ask student, do you like this class? Student would rate it between 5 and 1, 1 saying not at all and 5 saying most of the time. But when you have this, I like some and some are boring, it becomes imperative for researchers to look deeper into it. So what is it? So qualitative data was brought in the learning environment studies. Like for task orientation, I know that we have to do all our work and have to do it on time. I always do my work and the homework. Sometimes if I don't finish my work in the class, I take it home and do it. So it was showing that the student is task oriented, but how is that student task oriented? So what this qualitative data did, it gave a deeper understanding of what our numbers were telling us, the quantitative data was telling us, and it gave researchers a broader view of what was happening in the classroom. So for teacher support, like some of the studies were done, the teacher takes a personal interest in me, and students said often to almost never, but they were asked to give a qualitative statement here. We don't do it anymore. We do after the survey, we look at certain surveys and anomalies, we go and talk to the students. But incorporating this qualitative data gave us a much better understanding of the learning environments and where interventions could be applied. Computer learning environment inventory, it again had the scales of student cohesiveness, open-endedness, integration, teacher advocacy, and laboratory availability. Let me move on, where we had attitude to computers and computer courses, ACCC. It's again a developed questionnaire. Probably this could be used, or maybe we'll have to develop something else for web-based. And because this was developed somewhere in early 2000s, and students still had anxiety, enjoyment, and usefulness of computers and usefulness of course. All these three scales made sense, but at the same time, some had anxiety. How do we do it? Because they were not proficient with the computers. Move on. Now, to sum it up, these scale questionnaires have been used in many different countries, translated into different languages, and Indonesia or UNJ is playing a major role, translating most questionnaires and validating them in Bahasa, and have been used by hundreds of researchers and thousands of teachers. And they are very easy to use, found to provide an easy and convenient way to obtain information about learning environment, because it doesn't cost much. It doesn't cost much time. And now with our technology, Now you can do it through Google Forms, you can do it through Qualtrics, you can do it through all those programs and transfer it into Excel and see what's happening. And it gives instant, valuable feedback to teachers, which improves teaching and learning. Now, what are we doing by improving learning environments? Improving a school. So what should be characteristics of a school? Does the school have goals? What is the type of environment that school has? What sort of learning they want to have? Are they clear in communication? Is leadership positive? Are they making decisions the way it should be? You know, there are certain organizations where you have uncertainty all the time. It shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
But overall, we do need students there. And the leadership and above ones, are they committed towards improving the environment? Are they involving students as well as teachers in their day-to-day working? And then, yes, evaluation from time to time. And these are I'm saying here school, but I would say any educational institutions. These are the 10 characteristics of an excellent educational institution. So from external, there are certain things like, do we have a supportive school community or a supportive regional office? In your case, it could be the ministry. But with this external, we may not have much control over it. But as leaders in educational community, we have total control over the internal factors. Sense of purpose. What is the purpose of our institution? What is the purpose of my department? What is my purpose as a teacher? Am I paying enough attention to details? And I know in your UNJ, you are very good with paying attention to details. Is there collegiality? Do staff members get along well? Unless collegiality is very important for developing a positive environment. A teacher cannot develop a positive classroom environment unless teacher has a positive school environment. Teacher has to be happy inside to be teaching well. Is the emphasis on achievement? It has to be there, but not only that. And a good climate. And here we are talking about the psychosocial environments. And good teachers. Good teachers means quality of instruction, quality and quantity of. I would mainly focus on the quality of instruction. This is not mine. I have copied it from a source, and you have the reference here. To make your school, to make your department effective, what do we need? We need professional leadership, shared vision and goals, a great learning environment, concentration on teaching and learning, keep high expectation, and positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement means clear and fair discipline feedback. High expectations. Do we keep our expectations below what we should be achieving? Like in any educational institutions coming from Curtin, we do keep on planning where we are going in 5 years' time, where we are going in 10 years' time. So that's what we need to be doing. Moving, and these are the 11 factors over to why I put it here, because if we give attention to these 11 factors, your learning environments will improve. School level inputs, classroom level inputs, background variables, which is aptitude, and individual student level achievement. They are all interdependent. And how do we improve school environments? Assessments, assess the learning environment, provide feedback to students as well as teachers, reflect and discuss on it, run an intervention and reassess. It is actually a circular model, which you can even call an action research, where you are working in a circular way. Reassess, and then you will again come back to feedback, reflection, discussions, and intervention. And that's the sort of research I want every teacher to be doing. Every teacher be a teacher researcher. That's what could happen, and we could improve the learning environments. This is mission. Make sure that teachers know all these points. School mission statement and its associated goals are well understood by all teachers. Organization of the school reflects its goals, because sometimes we have goals stated or values stated, but we are not living them. Like in Curtin University, we have some values, and then leadership doesn't value those values. And teachers and staff are regularly reminded of that and address that. There is a high degree of consensus with the staff with regard to what school is trying to achieve. Mission of schools are very similar to other staff members. And I won't go, some teachers in school could try harder supporting the goal of the school. Moving from there, if we could do mission consensus, school will surely have an excellent learning environment, positive learning environment. In recent times, we have developed a few other questionnaires, developed validated places, which is a place-based learning environment. CB, LES, Yuli's contribution to the society. SPAC, Students' Perception of Assessment Questionnaire. CEC, Classroom Emotional Climate, which just a few days back has been validated, and a research paper submitted for publication. Hopefully will be available to all of you, and you want to use this questionnaire, feel free, and we have many more. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, open to questions and discussions. Okay. I think Yuli can navigate, and I'm available for you.
Okay. Okay, everyone. Could you stop share, Rekha? Okay. Okay, everyone. Anyone would like to ask a question? You can unmute the microphone, and then hopefully I can manage it. 64 participants here to doing it well for discussion. Any questions? Mukti, Pak Ridwan, Bu Elma, Pak Edit, Bu Zulfiani, atau mahasiswa ada pertanyaan? So Rekha, everyone already write down the right.
This our chatting usually.
Yeah, in the chat they already write down the what their opinion about the learning environment.
Yeah, it's all up to you, Yuli. Whom do you ask? I know it's not.
The last chat, Yul.
Yeah. Oh, the last chatting.
How to develop and choose the
Yeah.
appropriate.
So one question from Pak Ridwan is how to develop and choose the appropriate dimensions to measure all domains of learning in learning environment, learning environmental context, of course.
Of course, or student?
I mean, can you have a look the chat, Rekha? The under
Yeah. How to develop and choose the appropriate dimension to measure all domains of learning environment context, of course. Yes. Learning environment, as I said, we are not focusing on in learning environment research. We look at the psychosocial behaviors of students and teachers. That's the perception about how the learning environment is. We are not in learning environment research, we don't focus on the quality of the course. But we could look at whether this course is satisfying the needs of the students. Is this course meeting the expectations of the students? And probably, and that's one thing it's actually a very good question, Professor Ridwan, is we haven't developed a scale in this direction till now. And I'm taking note about it. We could look at, we may have to develop a scale around it, looking at student satisfaction with the course. And that could be looked at student satisfaction with the course, with the content of the course, the delivery of the course. Probably we can have a questionnaire coming out here.
Wow. So the new instrument, Pak. So
until now we have only looked at, we don't look at the quality of the learning and teaching materials. We are looking at what is happening. It's the behaviors.
I see, yeah. Okay, Rekha, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bu Mukti?
Okay. I write down in
The chat?
the chat.
Yeah.
Which one?
Not yet, not yet.
So Bu Mukti join us, Rekha, the Vice Dean of the...
Yeah, I know her. Her daughter also.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty daughter.
Yeah. Yang lain, mahasiswa, any question? Mahasiswa, ayo. Oh, that's the question, Rekha, in the chat from Bu Mukti.
COVID-19 always, right?
Yeah, it's very difficult to make interact with each other, Rekha. So we can I don't have any idea to improve how to make in the teaching learning process is the student can interact with us, each other.
Have you had a look at the QTI, questionnaire on teacher interaction? What we did is run it in the classroom and look at one of the positive scales where teacher is getting reasonably low scores. And if teacher tries to change that behavior, like if students think that this teacher is not very helping friendly, teacher tries to become more helping and friendly, you will see that student behaviors will change, and they will not improve only in helping friendly. They will improve in all other scales, and negative behaviors will come down. And I have done extensive research in that area, lots of studies, where what we did is we looked at some teachers whose students rated them very highly in positive behaviors. And we went to their classrooms, observed them, and then volunteer teachers observed their classrooms and asked them to make changes wherever they could. And when they made changes in just one of their behaviors, all other behaviors changed. And interactions in the classroom were quite healthy. I think, especially with interactions, or what we call them, teacher interpersonal behaviors, what that teacher himself or herself has to be active and has to be actively willing to make changes. It can't come from outside. Teacher has to be motivated to make those changes. It even happened, one of my colleagues currently, she is doing a research on where they made similar thing with interactions, and they took the whole school approach. The principal decided that we will have improved interactions in the school. There was a lot of resistance from teachers, but maybe a school of 120 teachers, 4 or 5 teachers, volunteered that will become part of this research. They became part of that research, and researcher would give them feedback on how to improve their behaviors in the classroom and be more interactive. And what happened is, then this group of 5, during tea time, they started talking about their research, and few more teachers got interested into it. By the time they were 10 or 15 teachers, they started giving presentation at tea time to the rest of the staff. And now, whole school is working in this project. And it hasn't stopped at whole school. Now in it hasn't happened in Western Australia, but in South Australia, the state where we have Adelaide is the capital. In Adelaide, government of, or I should say, Education Department of Adelaide is funding a major project, which is led by this colleague, and they are taking whole school approach only on developing better teacher interactions. And what this colleague of ours is telling them, improve just one scale. Focus on one scale, all rest of it will take care. Thank you. Did I answer your question? Did I answer your question?
So nanti Bu Mukti,
Maybe particularly in online learning like this.
Like online learning, I have meetings with my staff in the morning. First 5-10 minutes, I'll only talk about their welfare, which is very important.
yeah.
Because we can't ignore that. That human factor has to come in. And unless we make ourselves felt human to them, they won't feel comfortable with us.
Yeah. So in the questionnaire of teacher interaction, there is an 8 dimension, Bu. Jadi kalau improve one of the skill itu nanti some improvement bisa dilihat gitu. Namanya QTI. Jadi memang QTI itu
from the positive skills, don't improve on the
I mean that 4, not all the 8. It will be the negative scales.
Don't focus on that.
Yeah. So I think we need to have that 24 question, Rekha, rather, I mean,
Yes, I will get it. I'll get it for you.
we
I'll
only
get
have the 48
it. This
students.
is Tim Messi. I think that's, yeah, Tim Messi.
Yeah, it
You,
will,
you can Google him. Tim Messi.
yeah. So it will be easier for the online survey to only have a few questions.
Yeah.
There are good question from Shafa.
Oh, Safa, okay.
In chatting room.
So it's our students.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw Shafa. In my opinion, the pleasant learning environment is
Rekha, on the bottom, on the bottom,
As your presentation, are characteristic of good school.
after Bu Muktiningsi question, there is a Safa question. There, as your presentation, they are characteristic of good school, but learning doesn't occur just at school. So can we build characteristic of good school in any places? Very good.
Yeah.
surely the internal one. Yes, we may not have control over the external factors because we all acknowledge that we are restricted by funding, which is a major factor when we talk about any environment, developing an environment.
This is
When in present scenario, we are struggling with workload, who does what, then the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So we may not have control over the external factors, but we do have control over the internal factors, especially school leadership can play a major role. The way I was talking about the study which happened here in Perth in one of our major government schools is if principal would have asked all staff to participate in the study, those people, teachers wouldn't have. He asked for volunteers. Only out of 120, only 5 teachers volunteered, 4 or 5 volunteered. But it took some time, it took 2 years for all the teachers to come on board. And they came on board only when they saw value in it. You can, provided the rest of the school sees value in it. And school leadership, I mean, principal and below, can surely develop a positive learning environment. Similarly, we had one more school, maybe Yuli has gone there as well. Did you ever go to the Southern River College?
No, just pass through.
Yeah, near Armadale. It had a very, very bad reputation because it lies in a low SES area. And the principal of the school changed. Principal of school, she went all around and got industry funding for the school. She didn't go to Department of Education. She went to industry. She started STEM club in the school. That 20 to 30% of the students in that school were in and out of jail. They would do wrong things. But she started investing in them. She came to Curtin University and I was working with that school that time. This is nearly 10 years back. And 10 years back, one student from that school that year entered university. Next year, 2 students. And they were not, till then, they were not running higher level maths and science courses. But last year means 2020, we had 10 students from that school entering into science and engineering, 10 going to health sciences, and 5 or 8. But it's a major change in a school. The whole environment changed because of that leadership. And rest of the staff has to see value in it. It can be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, probably also even in the outside of the school, if the characteristic is there, it can be considered as good.
We don't have control over that, but we do have control over what's internal. And she did go to, she came begging everywhere. She came to Curtin and said, help me. So we went and we were running those STEM activities.
Very good. Okay, and the next question, Rekha, is from Eliana, our student as well. The last.
Can you, yeah, I can read that. In my opinion and experience, they enjoy.
No, Rekha, on the last chat. So you need to
go scroll down.
Scroll down in the bottom.
Yeah. Hello, Rekha. My name is Elena. As we know, most of the learning environment talks how to do in the classroom. So what I would like to ask is, how about in the laboratory? How is a pleasant learning environment in laboratory? Thank you.
You are a chemistry teacher.
Eliana, a great question. A learning environment in short answer is, look at the questions in SLI, Science Laboratory Learning Environment. If you have positive responses to those questions, you have a good learning environment. Now, coming to developing a positive learning environment, the instructions you are providing to students, are they clear? Sometimes they are not. And if they are not clear, students are going to make a havoc in the lab. And especially I'm looking at thinking of chemistry laboratories. It can be a disaster zone. Is there cohesiveness between the theory they are learning and the practical they are doing? Do they see relevance of this, what they are doing in the lab, to their learning? So those are the things you have to take into consideration. But specifically, I would say go and look at SLI, which has 35 questions. Make sure all these points are taken care of while you're developing a positive learning environment in a laboratory. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliana. Any questions?
Thank you, Rekha.
You can ask directly. Andy asked question, Rekha, in the last chat as well.
Who did?
Andy, the last chat.
Andy, yeah. Rekha, I'm interested and curious about the ecological dimensions. As a teacher, how do the approaches to the ecology of our class? It's, again, I'm coming back to, there are certain factors which you can't control, but certain factors. I remember when I was a child and something has changed. Every day, 2 students had a duty of cleaning the classroom. I don't know whether Ridwan resonates. This was Asian culture. And we can't do it anymore because it's child labor. It is unethical. I think that was very important. That was very, very important because we accepted that room as a space of our own. It was not school space. It was my space. So that was the ecology of the classroom. How do I keep it clean? If I have cleaned it in the morning, I won't let any other child make it dirty during the daytime. You can't throw, dust or anything in the classroom. And at the same time, do they decorate it? Like a child, while sitting in the classroom for 6 hours a day, should feel comfortable. Is it well ventilated? if there is a window, my classroom doesn't have an air conditioner in an environment like Jakarta, do I need to keep a window open or closed? So teacher needs to be sensitive to it, to make it comfortable for students to sit. What is the acoustics? I've gone in certain classrooms where acoustics is very, very bad. It is echoing back. Make sure, and there are certain, I know in certain village schools what happens, but what can you do? Can you give it as a project to students to change that ecology? But I would say most of the schools right now, wherever I've gone in Jakarta, those schools are well equipped. So then would be, if they are well equipped, set the furniture in a way it looks nice, ask students to decorate the walls so that it becomes their classroom, and at the same time, it's beautifully done. That's the ecology of the class, not to spread the dirt here and there. That's what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you, Andi. Any other questions? Probably last question, anyone? Oh, there is Tara question. Tara,
It's a long one.
yeah,
Tara.
My supervised student, she's doing research in QTI and co-teaching and co-generative dialogues. So
I
it's
can see that. In my research, I'm using QTI instruments. So I'll ask to you 2 questions about QTI. First, I have read your doctoral thesis entitled, I'm pleased to read your doctoral thesis, but I'm a little confused by your statement. There is a negative correlation between the scales that are opposite. And this is the case with strict and student responsibility freedom. Could you explain that negative correlation? Sarah, my PhD thesis was first ever learning environment study being done in India, or I should say Jammu and Kashmir, where I did my data collection and where I come from. Students there, till then, there was a very, very poor environment of educational research there. My study was done more than 20 years back, nearly 20 years back. And students were not used to filling questionnaires. So some of the data, because of the culture of the place, we are not sure what happened there. And what you are referring to is the statement which I have seen there. And it's, but at the same time, I can see that culture being replicated in your study. So it's the culture of the place where students see a negative correlation between strict and admonishing scale. That means, in a way, other studies are showing that students do want some level of strictness in the classroom. If you go to psychology journals, psychology also says when you have teenage children in the home, teenage children rebel against their parents, but at the same time, they want their parents to be strict. And same behavior is, it's an expectation of students that your teacher will be strict, but they don't want teacher to be admonishing. Strict, when the teacher is strict, if you would have gone to the qualitative, comments of my thesis is students saying, yes, our teacher is strict, but the teacher is strict for our good. So students are realizing that teacher is strict for our good, but admonishing is a very bad behavior. You don't make fun of students. I would never make fun of students, and they don't want that, and it makes sense. And if it's happening in your case, I would say your students are really very smart. They know what they want. They want teacher to be a little strict, but not making fun of them. Thank you.
The last.
Just ask Tara, does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Tara?
Yes, thank you so much. And second question, Miss.
What is the second question?
Yeah, strict scale. There is a statement that student must be afraid of the teacher, whereas in the admonishing scale statement, teachers get angry easily. Most likely, the students are afraid of the teacher because the teacher is easy to get angry, right? So,
Yes.
how is the connection between the strict and admonishing scale?
No, strict is teacher is living by the rules. Admonishing is you're making fun of the student, and that shouldn't happen.
Oh, I think there is a culture differences, Rekha. In here, the strict seems to be negative. Strict is negative, but
Our ideal teacher, the research we did here in Perth as well, the strict is considered like, we don't want on a scale of 1 to 5, strict behavior to 2.5 is the best teacher, is an ideal teacher. If it is 3 or 4, that's not good. Strict to a level, 50% is considered to be good.
okay.
Okay.
You read a paper by Den Brock, Tony Reckard, and Daryl Fisher, where they've talked about the teacher typologies. And in ideal teacher, the strict level is at 50%.
Oh, that will be good if you can share that paper as well.
I'll send it to you. I'll send it.
There is a profile of the ideal teacher, isn't it? That will be good as well.
And that is around 50%.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Probably is the last question because the student have the lecture with Bu Mukti, the next one. So they are
No rest. No rest.
I have make agreement with them, so the class is changed to this discussion. It's no problem.
Thank you, Mukti. Thank you. I won't hold them. I won't hold them.
Yeah.
Being late. So,
No problem, you.
thank you, Bu.
I had changed the class to this this room.
This meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, this meeting, so they don't need to enter my class.
Okay,
This is same with
my
my class.
Okay. Hi Rekha, I'm Ega. The last question. I mean, on the last, Ega asking you question, Rekha.
my friends.
Ega.
Question.
We found another question about learning. It's called Experiences of Teaching and Learning Questionnaire. I don't know, we can't find many resources.
Oh, Rekha. So it is the student project. They have to do the project in my course to translate the question.
Sorry, I don't know much about this questionnaire.
It's new.
It depends. Do you have any reference for this questionnaire?
Yes, it is the Journal of Learning Environment Research. I think it's the new one.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
it's the only paper that has been published on this questionnaire.
Okay. I'll look into it and see what I can provide for this.
Yes, probably they can discuss the dimension only. I mean, some of dimension probably.
And they are looking for the questionnaire?
Oh, they already have it. In the journal, we have it, the question.
Okay. Can you send me the reference and I'll have a look at it.
Nanti Ega di ini juga ya, send juga Ega dan Armada dan sebagainya.
Bisa langsung lalu ini aja ya. Langsung melalui apa chatting ini bisa kok kalau ada.
Ada attachment ya Pak?
ETLQ ada yang file itu klik file lalu dimasukkan ke dalam file. Kalau ada itu kan mereka kan minta.
Any other question before we before we move? Anyone? Okay.
It's enough, I think.
It is enough. Okay. So everyone, we try to, I mean, probably the UNJ become the pioneer ya, Pak Ridwan, Bu Mukti, the learning environment research in Indonesia. So we try to, I mean, to translate the questionnaire that probably some of the questionnaire not really fit with us, but at least we know what it is, the culture's issue as well. And then the situation in Indonesia, but at least we would like to develop this kind of research group not only for translating and so on, but would like to improve our teaching and learning as well.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah,
that should happen.
yeah,
You're in beginning stages.
yeah,
But next would be what you're finding and implementing changes.
yeah. So, yeah, for the student project, currently is only getting the perception of the student. You are not yet improve. I mean, if you would like to improve the learning environment, it's mean like experiment, you doing the method and so on, and then you again assess the learning environment after the experiments in the quantitative research, something like that. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much, Pak Ridwan. Rekha.
Your valuable knowledge, which is very useful for us, I think.
Thank you, Paratwan. Thank you. I'm so glad to see that Learning Environment Center is coming up in the university. I'm so glad.
Thank you.
I enjoy this meeting truly, I think.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Silakan kalau mau meninggalkan ruang. So Rekha, you just stay for a while and then the rest.
Okay.
Ya silahkan mahasiswa kalau mau left group, thank you ya.
Yeah. Group.
Partisipasinya silahkan.
Thank you, Rekha. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha. Bye.
Thank you for saying
Thank you,
Rekha.
Rekha.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So it's almost 63, and then I will share the file of PowerPoint presentation as
Yeah,
well
sure.
as the
Thank you.